Hey y'all, it's Ryan, and today I want to talk to you about a paper written by my PhD advisor, Dr. Christopher Fagundes, and his postdoc advisor, Dr. Jan Kukot-Glaser, and Dr. Ron Glaser. And their paper clarifies the specific ways that early life stress impacts immune functioning across the lifespan, and it proposes a model to explain why they think this occurs.
Back in 2013, when I wrote this paper, there was a lot of evidence that was mounting showing that those that experienced early life stress, whether it was abuse or neglect or maybe poverty early in life, not only suffered from mental health problems across the lifespan, but also physical health problems. Evidence was mounting that we would see these effects where people who experience this early life stress, even if they had a reasonably normative life when they were 60 or 70 years old, they would have more health problems. They would have a higher rate of morbidity and mortality. And I really wanted to understand why. So in this paper, I summed up the literature as it was at the time, showing that early life stress seemed to be associated with immune dysregulation. It also seemed to be associated with cardiac problems.
The authors summarized work demonstrating that severe early life stressors explain some of the variation in immune responses seen in adults. And they reviewed work first showing that early adversity is associated with elevated inflammation, telomere shortening, latent herpesvirus reactivation, and a poor response to an immunogenic tumor. Then they proposed a model to explain the biobehavioral pathways underlying each. So I'll walk us through that work and their model today. Okay, so first, what are the signs that early life stress is affecting immune dysregulation across the lifespan? Hint, it involves inflammation. Each of these is commonly studied in health psychology research, so if you're interested, you can definitely add this to your future research. So first, inflammation. We talk a lot about inflammation in health research because it's a risk factor for so many diseases, especially diseases of older adulthood. And the idea here is that people who experienced early life stress, usually low socioeconomic status or childhood maltreatment, experience heightened systemic inflammation, so that means throughout your entire body, and greater inflammatory reactivity in response to a specific acute stressor in a lab. Another example is telomeres. Telomeres are the caps at the end of our DNA that protect our chromosomes. And as we age, our telomeres get shorter. Past work has found that early life stress can facilitate cell aging by reducing telomere length. And this might be because inflammation can activate T-cell proliferation, which shortens telomeres. Regardless, shorter telomeres are linked to early mortality. And for example, people who were institutionalized for a longer time as younger children had significantly shorter telomere length in middle childhood compared to those who were institutionalized for less time. These differences also persist for older adults dealing with current stress. For example, older adult dementia family caregivers who experienced emotional, physical, or sexual abuse as children had shorter telomeres compared to those people who did not experience abuse. Third is latent herpesvirus reactivation. Okay, so this might be my favorite kind of immune marker because I just think that latent viruses are super cool to study because herpesviruses are so tricky and they can evade the immune system from destroying them completely. People carry them in a latent state for the rest of their lives. And usually these viruses will produce asymptomatic infections, right? But when cellular immunity is compromised, that latent virus can be reactivated. So the less effective your cellular immune system is, the easier it is for herpes viruses to replicate, and we measure that by increased antibody titers. If you were wondering, yes, psychological stress and depression can enhance herpes virus reactivation. And again, there's evidence that early life stress can promote herpes virus reactivation in children, adolescents, and even have lasting consequences for later life latent herpes virus reactivation. So lastly, my advisor did really cool work showing how psychological stress can affect immunogenic tumors. And immunogenic just means that the immune system plays an important role in both the appearance and the progression of that tumor. Not many types of cancers are immunogenic, but basal cell carcinoma is, and it's also the most common form of skin cancer. So my advisor showed that among basal cell carcinoma patients who experienced a severe stressor in the past year, the people who were emotionally maltreated by a parent in childhood had poorer immune responses. This work is super cool, but it doesn't apply to all cancers because most aren't immunogenic. After describing these associations with early life stress, the authors then proposed this model.
And what I did was I created a model to try to understand what was going on. And my model proposed that when we experience early life stress, whether it's abuse or neglect, or we're low in socioeconomic status, we become really hypervigilant to stressors because it's adaptive at the time. But that hypervigilance, what it does is it kind of tunes our stress response so every subsequent stressor across the lifespan we're more reactive. At the same time, we don't learn the same type of coping skills and that someone might learn in a more healthy environment. So what my model really proposes is if everyone was going to have a perfect life and you weren't going to experience stressors along the way, we might not see much difference between those that experienced this really high levels of early life stress and those that didn't. However, that's not what happens in life. And so what we proposed in our model and tested afterward was this notion that if you experience early life stress and it's accompanied by a major life stressor somewhere along the lifespan, whether it's a divorce, a loss of a spouse, it could be a disease diagnosis, that is when you see those real big differences. Because what you see is under a stressful condition, those that experience this early life stress are more reactive. Their autonomic nervous system, their neuroendocrine system, and their immune system then becomes more dysregulated and leads to more physical health problems.
There's still a lot of work to be done to test different components of this model. So for example, we don't actually know yet whether people who experienced early life stress are less likely to show physiological benefits from supportive relationships. However, there is good evidence that people who experience early life stress self-report having less social support. So to wrap it all up, this review paper proposed a model emphasizing that early adversity leads to greater stress sensitivity, which then puts people at greater risk for immune dysregulation. And they developed this model to explain why people who experienced early life stress experience elevated inflammation, telomere shortening, latent herpesvirus reactivation, and a poorer response to an immunogenic tumor than people who did not experience early life stress. And like I've said before, this is a really exciting area because we still have so much to learn. All right, y'all, that's all for today. Thanks for coming by, and please click like or subscribe for more content like this.